Today, we're talking about Slayer. Now, this is a band that didn't just play fast, heavy music. They literally forged an entire genre through sheer, uncompromising aggression, and in the process became one of the most influential and controversial bands in history.
Okay, let's just dive right in with this number. 28 minutes and 55 seconds. That's it. That is the entire runtime of what many people consider the single most aggressive, most important album in the whole history of extreme metal. It was an album that absolutely changed everything.
We are, of course, talking about Slayer's 1986 masterpiece, Rain in Blood. This thing was so relentlessly fast, so brutal, that it just completely blew the doors off what anyone thought was possible in music. It really wasn't just another record, it was a cultural flashpoint. But here's the thing. To really get why that album hit so hard, we have to rewind. We've got to go back to the beginning, back to 1981 in Huntington Park, California. This is where Slayer was born, not in some kind of vacuum, but as a direct, angry answer to the sound that was dominating everything at the time. And you can see the conflict right here. I mean, you have to picture the scene, right? The rest of Los Angeles was completely wrapped up in the glam rock scene. You know, the hairspray, the catchy melodies, all of it designed for commercial radio. And then, four guys got together to create its exact ferocious opposite. And this is really the secret sauce. It's all about the band's core chemistry. You had this incredible creative tension, especially between the two guitarists. On one side, there's Jeff Hanneman, who was all about the raw speed and rebellion of hardcore punk. On the other, you've got Kerry King, who was coming from a more traditional metal place, like Judas Priest. And when those two worlds smash together, that's the Slayer sound. So while their sound is taking shape, they're also building their whole image. And in those early years, it was all about a raw, do-it-yourself ethic, combined with a very calculated and shocking public image. Think about this for a second. $1,500. That was the entire budget for their debut album, Show No Mercy. They had zero label backing, so it was completely self-financed. Singer Tom Araya was paying for it with his salary as a respiratory therapist, and they had to borrow the rest from Kerry King's dad. That's as DIY as it gets. And all that satanic imagery, the pentagrams, the makeup, it wasn't just for show. No way. It was a genius strategic move. You gotta remember, this was the height of the 80s satanic panic. Adopting this image was the perfect way to tick people off, alienate the mainstream, and basically filter their audience. It was a test. It made sure that if you were a Slayer fan, you were all in. And you can literally hear their sound evolving in real time across these first three releases. They go from that raw, unpolished energy of the debut to a much darker, way faster style on Haunting the Chapel. By the time we get to Hell Awaits, they're getting super technical. It's like you can hear them building the weapon that was about to be unleashed. Which brings us right back to 1986 and Rain in Blood. This is the moment they connect with the legendary producer Rick Rubin. And Rubin didn't just record their sound, he helped them weaponize it. Rubin's big insight was actually kind of counterintuitive. He realized that true heaviness didn't come from just a wall of noise and reverb. No, it came from clarity. He stripped away all the sonic clutter, and what was left was just the band's surgical precision. It actually made their aggression feel way more direct and impactful. The first key component to that sound, Dave Lombardo's drumming. This machine gun double bass technique wasn't just fast, it was a relentless wall of sound. He basically wrote the new rule book for every single extreme metal drummer who came after him. He became the new standard. The second key, the guitar work. Critics at the time called their solos chaotic, messy, but that was the entire point. They were intentionally playing notes that were technically wrong to create a sound that mirrored the madness and horror of the lyrics. It was sonic chaos. And speaking of that lyrical horror, man, it led to a firestorm of controversy. The album's opening track, Angel of Death, was so graphic in its clinical description of Joseph Mengelé's experiments that Def Jam's distributor, Columbia Records, just refused to release it, flat out. It proved their uncompromising approach wasn't just musical, it was lyrical too. So, how do you follow up a perfect genre-defining moment like that? Well, it's pretty much impossible. And the decades that followed Rain and Blood were marked by some big shifts in their sound, constant lineup changes, and eventually some real profound tragedy. This timeline really just shows you how much the band had to navigate. First, they lose their iconic drummer Dave Lombardo in '92. Then, in 2011, primary songwriter Jeff Hanneman contracts a devastating flesh-eating disease, and he tragically passed away just 2 years later. After decades of that kind of turmoil, it all led up to a massive final farewell tour that ended in 2019. At the end of that very last performance, singer Tom Araya just stood on stage alone for a couple of minutes, just soaking it all in. His emotional farewell really truly felt like the definitive final word on the band's incredible 4-decade career. It seems like that was it. But, we're talking about Slayer, a band as iconic and relentless as them. The end is never really the end, is it? It turns out the demand for their specific brand of aggression hadn't faded one bit. Yep, nearly 5 years after that emotional farewell, they were back. Out of nowhere, they announced a return to the stage, not for a full tour, but for a series of huge festival appearances. And just like that, they immediately reestablished themselves as one of the most powerful live acts in the world. And now it's all coming full circle. In 2026, they're set to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the very album that defined them, Rain and Blood, by performing it in its entirety. It's just a perfect moment, both for the band and for their fans. So in the end, Slayer's legacy isn't just in their records or their influence. It's in their unwavering, 4-decade commitment to a single, brutal, and utterly uncompromising vision. And that leaves us with one final thought. After all this time, what is it about a sound this extreme that makes it so timeless?